This is Ryan Austin, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, people. I am so excited about today's guest. I got a haircut at the fancy salon in town. We've been working to get this guy for a while. He's a top voice on LinkedIn for strategic communications, venture capital, and thought leadership. He's featured in Benzinga, Seeking Alpha, Business Insider, and a lot of very important things. He's organizing a family office conference and launching a podcast based in New York City. Please join me in welcoming Ryan Austin to the program. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing great. Thank you very much.
Well, we connected a few months ago through kind of our mutual interest in family offices. And the little I do know about family offices, Ryan, is people into it, they tend to follow a pattern. You know, maybe they went to a Northeastern prep school and perhaps their parent wrote them a nice letter that helped them get into Brown University. They may be clerk or something under a Supreme Court justice, and then they're handed a job. That was your blueprint, right?
No, not at all. I've seen that though.
Yeah. So I mean, what? Take us to your path, because we'll get into the family office side, but what I'm particularly interested in is when you were an adolescent. You know, you had a little bit of twists and turns. What are some of the first challenges you endured in your teens?
Sure. So I did go to a fancy private school, but not the normal type of private school. I will say I had a really great childhood growing up, and you're right. That is like the whole silver spoon story. And I did have that. I mean, we had a nice, I'm from Long Island, New York. I grew up here, and early on in my life, you know, it was great. We had like a house on Kiwa Island. We had several of them. We had properties. The Austin side of the family, I had a lot of wealth. My grandma was like the matriarch of the family. They were teachers, but she was excellent with investing and real estate. And I forget the name. I think she opened up one of the first. I'm gonna butcher the names, like Sally Mae, or one of those like home shelters for women, like abused women that need to get away with their children. She did a lot of philanthropic work, and I think she was on like Marquis Who's Who, Women in Business, when Marquis was, reputable. So she was an impressive woman, but yeah, when she, there was a bunch of issues in the family and things started to go. So I guess I kind of had the silver spoon, and then I got it taken away type of thing. But I was young enough.
Quick time out. I mean, can only imagine. I had a very fortunate upbringing too, but it's when you're able to have these luxuries or kind of excesses in a certain way, it's got to be way worse to have them and then get it taken out than never to have them all. Like, what's your take?
Yes and no. So I feel like, this is we're not going to get into the whole drama of the family, but she was very close with me, and she was very supportive in terms of what you need to do. She was all about school and all about, you have to carve your own path in life and you can't rely on other people. So in a way, that was a lesson that kind of got ingrained early on when I was young. However, I feel like the timing was good enough where I was young enough to appreciate it, look back on that with fondness, but at the same time, have a mark in my head of this is where I want to be at again one day, and have a place in Kiwa Island and have several properties and build myself back up. But it was hard. I will say this, the time where things started to, change dramatically, I was at that age, 12, 13, 14 years old, where that's when all kids are kind of the same, right? You have money, you have friends, you want to be like your friends who don't have money, or the cool kids, or if you have good grades, you want, what I mean? Like all those tropes, it doesn't matter.
No,
really.
the teen angst is ubiquitous, no matter where you come from.
100%. And I ran with it, really, the teen angst aspect of it. And I guess I rebelled, and I was in a beautiful town. We had a golf course, a place called Belterre, New York, on Long Island. It's really a really beautiful place on the North Shore, and I, shooting fireworks off like every weekend on the golf course, getting chased by the constables. I never got arrested. I never got like put in cuffs because I was young, and I feel like I always, when I did get caught, I was respectful enough, and where they were just like, I don't even want to deal with you anymore. So, I
Not
never
worth our
crossed
time.
that line.
Yeah.
Well, I got in enough trouble where, yeah, and I got sent to Valley Forge Military Academy, and my dad he picked me up from a party one night when I was with my friends, and I think I was 15, and we had been underage drinking one of those parties, and
So a good party.
one of the it was yeah, I mean it was one of the rare occasions where it wasn't at my house, right? He was working all the time. I was with a single dad at this point. He was doing venture capital at the time, and he was busy. There was a lot going on. It's tough being a single parent on either side. I think on my as a father, maybe particularly extra difficult, and um, I have a big family too. I was the oldest, but yeah, it was one of the rare occasions where the party wasn't at my house. But I was just getting, I don't know if it was a cry for help or something. Looking back, it's all these different things. I wasn't doing well in school. The only saving grace I had was sports. And I remember one time he picked me up at one of my friends' houses around town, and I had my friends in the car who were we were always up to no good. And he was driving them home as well. And he was like, Brian, I can't fucking do this. You're going to military school. And I remember being like, okay, okay. And I just remember my friends laughing, chuckling in the back. And I'm
He
like,
said it in earshot.
yeah, oh yeah. He was like, he's funny like that, my dad. He didn't give a shit. And he took I think they might have stayed. I don't know what the hell happened that night, but I was like, okay, I accepted my fate. There was zero fight in it. And from then on, it was actually kind of cool because this was 10th grade. So I was 15, and it kind of actually helped me pull myself out and focus more. I started to work out because all I knew was that it was going to be scary and serious. I mean, it's all boys military. Valley Forge is pretty famous as far as military boarding schools go. It's private. It's in Wayne, Pennsylvania. Um, Both places I'd never really been. And I will say my dad actually did go there. He went there though, his post-grad year. He ended up playing football for D1AA when Hofstra had a football team, which they ended up disbanding, I think, like 10 years ago or so. But he was like 19, a little bit different. They have a junior college at at Valley Forge. And from then on, it was at least I had that tethered to. I mean, I was still going crazy with my friends. In a way, I had like 6 last hurrahs type of thing, before it went out. But the one thing I noticed,
4 or 5 weren't enough. You needed
exactly, yeah, and just like wild stuff. And then I did, I worked out and got prepared because the way I was getting in, not for my grades, is because I was good at football, and I got a scholarship to play for the varsity team for my junior year. Yeah, I come from a big football family, wrestling family, and yeah, that summer he took me off and dragged me to Valley Forge. Well, I went willingly, and from then on, it was kind of crazy. But I will say that best probably saved my life. It was a really great experience, and I guess without going too deep, within 2 months of so they have you go there in the summer for like, just like regular football in school, you have training, conditioning for like a month before the actual semester starts. So I think I got there in late July, early August, and we trained, and then basic training starts. I don't know how deep you want me to get into this, but the basic training aspect of it, football was football, right? The good thing about football is we're not supposed to have our cell phones. So you're not supposed to have anything really connecting you back to the real world. But I would hide
documented, yeah.
Exactly. And yeah. Well, that's okay. I think it's still on YouTube. There's a pretty big video on YouTube about Valley Forge Military Academy during basic. They call it there, they call it plebe system. You're a plebe when you're there. That's the thing. And this is wild. So I was doing great in football for the first couple of months before we even had our first game. Then basic training starts. And basic is, they shave your head 0. It's been, it's been a while, but the first night, 4 a.m., they kick the doors. You're in barracks. It's you with a relatively small room, and then there's a bunk bed. So it's you and your roommate. My roommate, Josh was his name. He was from Pittsburgh. He was a rower. I remember he was like 6'4". I think he was raised by nuns, actually, and he was my age, and he was also on the football team. And yeah, they kick the door open, 4 a.m., drag you out. You have to stand at attention. But it's not like military guys. I mean, these are kids who have been there for a couple of years or 1 year before you. So it's cadet run. The cadets have rank in the school. So you might get dropped for push-ups by a kid that's 2 years younger than you, right? And then some kid, punk, tries to tell you to, drop, and you're like, fuck you, Yeah. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse here, so I apologize.
Too
but
late. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, I'll tone it down. And then you're like, what are you talking? And then the bigger guy, who's a bigger rank, who's older than you, comes out. And then you have everybody ganging up on you. But little things like, and you had to, there was uniform requirements. You had to stand at attention. You couldn't say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" You'd have to stand like this, and then they'd say, "What plebe Boston?" Or I don't think they even called you a name. I think you have to say, "This plebe needs to use the latrine," which is the bathroom word, military. A lot of hazing, and I was resistant to all of it, of course, because I didn't like, they called you a shitbag if you wouldn't listen and follow and snap into line. And I didn't do that at home. And I wasn't going to do it with these kids. So I had an attitude and a chip on my shoulder. And I made it worse before it got better.
Mm-hmm.
One time I started, and you had companies. I was A company. They were on one floor, which is infantry. So it's you with kids who were forced to go there, or juvie with the state of Pennsylvania.
It was the less bad option. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, a bunch of those, that's infantry. Then there's, you have the legacy. They're like really wealthy kids. I think the year I went was the year a lot of kids from Saudi Arabia went, and their fathers were paying. And that's how the school got a lot of money. We had a lot of kids from China, a lot of wealthy kids from China whose parents are like politicians and business people, South America. So, and as far as like the family office tie, that starts to begin there, because eventually you get very close with these people because you're kind of suffering with your class, and at least through basic. And early on into basic 2, I was tackling. So varsity, they have post grad. So you're with kids that I was a junior. So it wasn't me with other juniors and then seniors. It was me, juniors, seniors, and then kids with like that extra special year that doesn't really exist in public school. Usually so that they could get their grades up to go to a D1 school or get another year of football in varsity so they can go to D1. And, that's the program. And by the way, this football program was totally different than the one I came from. Port Jeff is a very small town. I think I had 120 kids in my graduating class, even Long Island, that's small. So this was like football world. Pennsylvania is really.
Yeah.
And one day during practice, they were like, "Austin, we got to toughen you up. This is one of those country, the coaches aren't military. They're like not even into the military stuff. They think it's a waste, and it probably does affect the condition of the players too. Austin, we got to toughen you up." And they put me against some linemen, and it was Oklahoma drill. I don't know if you ever played football.
Yeah, Pop Warner, 3 years, started every year, but go ahead.
Okay. So you grab a football. Somebody has a football. Somebody has to tackle them. That's the Oklahoma drill.
Yeah,
you both start on your back.
Concussion exchange program too, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, I have plenty of those. And this kid was like, I was 150 pounds, and I was losing weight through basic. So then this guy was 300 something pounds, post grad lineman, and I tackled him, but I wasn't gonna not tackle him, so I really went for it, and I hyperextended my knee. I tore my patellar tendon. My kneecap was like on the side of my leg. I won't get into too many details, but I had to get major knee surgery. So it's a couple of weeks really after my dad dropped me off, so he felt bad and he drove all the way back, brought me to Bryn Mawr. They basically reconstructed my patellar tendon, reattached it. It was like a 6-month full recovery, but I was able to go home for one day. for one day,
For
two
one
days, I think.
day.
I don't remember because they're, the painkillers were strong. But yeah, and I saw my friends and I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. And then of course, but he was like, right, you need to go back. I mean, it's
Yeah.
expensive. It's a big opportunity. I remember he was very, not about the money, but just like, you need to do this for yourself. So I went back. I hobbled back. I was known as the cripple, by the way, for about 6 months.
Oh,
I wasn't, and
that
I'm
was very
usually known as the
sensitive of them.
redhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't have, or the ginger. I didn't have red hair because they shaved it. So I was just the cripple.
Well, at least
And
it's a little more specific, like ginger and redhead. I mean, that applies to lots of us. Like cripple,
yes,
it's
yes,
more
that's
unique.
exactly. And they, in fact, most of them towards the end of the year, they get a little bit lenient. You could grow like a 1 or a 2
Mm.
in terms of your hair. And then they were like, Austin, they knew my last name because you have name tags. They didn't really call you military, like your first name. Austin, you're a redhead. And I'm like, yeah, it's just a weird type of like, these are the little things. And I have so many of these little stories, but, and even though I was crippled, I went back. I couldn't play football. So I was like, that sucks. I was able to grab my cell phone. I was hiding in the football locker and I had a big leg cast that was like up to my hip, down to my ankle.
Uh-huh.
And I would stuff the cell phone into my cast of my leg, which you're not supposed to have. And I would crutch over to the infirmary. It's like 10-acre property, by the way, I think larger. So there's a lot of crutching around because I couldn't walk. And oh man, it was awful. But eventually we got through, football was out for that time. And I started to work out. That's even just the upper half of my body. I turned 16. I got my knee surgery a couple days before I was 16. I turned 16 back on campus. School was kind of in session and I was miserable because I couldn't even walk. I mean, it's one thing to tell people to F themselves when they're giving you orders when you can use
Right.
both your legs. I did do that when I first got back and I got woken up in the middle of the night. I was getting smacked around by my own crutches. So I was like, this isn't long term good.
No.
I need to change my attitude. And I did. I started, it's a beautiful, it's amazing the things that can happen when you're literally stuck to a chair and the only thing you could do is go to the gym and do schoolwork.
Mm.
And I should have probably done that early on. I never would have had to go to military school, but the structure was really big. The regimented style, the stuff that seems kind of wacky and unnecessary. It's part of the, every morning, wake up, walk, I'd crutch for the most part to the front company area, get in a formation, march down to the mess hall for breakfast, march back up, 10 minutes, grab your bags, go to school up the hill, march back for lunch. Lunch is a little bit less structured. Then find time to go to the gym. Then you go to sports. I was crutching into the football just to be a part of the team after the fact, but it happened so early. They were doing games. They were going to Ohio in some cases. They would, because
Wow.
it was other private schools. I mean, it's like D1 as far as the high school football experience goes. And eventually I'm like, I have a doctor appointment next week to check on I don't want to go to
Right.
jump on it's
You don't wanna go
winter.
on a
I don't want to
bus.
go to Ohio on a bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad's like, you should be part of the team. I'm like, the team is done. The team,
The
I'm
team's not
already,
part of me, Dad. Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, just we're okay. Basic ends. You get to see your family at the end of basic, which was nice. It's only about 6 weeks. So I think like first week of October, longest thing ever. And there's a lot of stories I don't need to go into there. You can look up Valley Forge Plebe System on YouTube. You'll find a video with some like metal music in the background. That happened the year before I came. In fact, all of the officers tried to film the first day of basic, and the one adult in the building who always looked out for me, actually, Color Sergeant Poole, was like a Royal Marine. We had a sister school in England, I think. I can't tell you this story because it's foul. But he was a really nice guy. He was really good to me. He was like in his 50s, retired Royal Marine, lived in Wayne, Pennsylvania, strong, thick Liverpool accent. Great guy. I'll just say he always called me Ginger Minge. I did not know what that meant. And he'd call it on it was a building, barracks, and he'd call it from the TAC office. Ginger Minge, report to the TAC office. And he would confiscate people's 40s. There was a lot of like 40-ounce booze that they would get from the other cadets. And dip was huge. I didn't know what dip was until I went to Valley Forge. And then I took it back and ruined Long Island with dip.
Thank you. Right?
And because we got home like twice a year. So anyways, towards the end, and you could tell me if I'm going on, but I got in really good shape. I had like straight A's.
Wow.
I became a leader as far as my class goes. And this is again over the course of like 7 months. towards the end, and I was elected to go to officer candidate school and be a second lieutenant, which is like the second highest rank you can get. It doesn't usually happen for first years, but my brothers and from A company voted me in, and it was a great turnaround from being in a place I was reluctant in a way to go, but I fully embraced it. I got good grades. I was rehabbing my knee. I put on like 20 pounds of muscle. I was huge. In fact, they would test me there. This is the most flattering thing ever. They would test me for steroids. You get drug tested
Wow,
routinely.
that
And
is
they
an ultimate
thought that
compliment.
I was on, like, and I wasn't, obviously. I was just like, when you're 16 years old, you have tremendous amount of testosterone, and all you do is work out and go to the gym and, work out, do school, march around, do for parades and stuff. That was it. So, and then the last weekend I was there, I this was great. It was flying high. Everything was going well. And then the last weekend I was there, my buddy who had been there for a couple of years. So if you elect not to get rank, they called you an old man if you had already done your basic. So the old men were on like the other side of barracks, and I befriended a lot of those. They were crazy. Not yeah, they were fun, I'll say. And the thing we would do is we would go off campus and hop on the train out of Wayne, Pennsylvania, and disappear in Philly and walk around Philly, which probably it's less dangerous then, I think. And you know, I sold a bunch of to the rich Chinese kids. I sold my I had Family Guy DVDs that my aunt got me, and I sold each DVD probably $20 for like I sold each one for like 20. So I ended up making a couple $100, and before they went back to China, and I went AWOL basically to Philly. I wasn't supposed to leave. Had a couple 40s on like it was very honestly probably the most dangerous thing I've ever done because we were just on some offshoot of in the city, and it was two white boys in like the middle of downtown Philly, and in an area that was like should have been under construction. Oh man! And I got caught on my way back, basically because I was about to make it. The train broke down.
Oh.
This guy, yeah, the train, it didn't break down. It stopped for 10 minutes and it became late. So they have security that they hire. And this guy from day one hated me. And I used to, when I had my knee surgery initially, I'd go to the infirmary a lot to get medicine dispensed. So I was like, which is, I don't know, they'd give me like one Vicodin a day. This was early on. But I would sit there for 3 hours to avoid the military crap and and hobbling around. And I'd run the shower. They had their own shower there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'd be showering in a stall on campus and you really couldn't get it wet. They had like a bath and stuff because, this was pretty serious knee surgery early on, but I would abuse it. I'd sit there for like 2 hours and call every member of my family because it was an escape for me with the phone I was not supposed to have. Right. I ended up getting caught with the phone too because the infirmary, I think, told my TAC officer. Nice. Long story, the guy who caught me. So at this point, I can move again relatively well. I'm off crutches and we're running onto campus. Me and my friend Tom from Boston. He's a lawyer now. Hey, Tom. And great guy. And we were sneaking back onto campus and I got caught in a flashlight. You know what caught me? My freaking red hair. But I ran inside because, this is the end of the year. They're laxing up. I probably had like a 3 at this point. And the security officer was the one who would drive me to physical therapy. I just, when somebody just doesn't like you, it's not. I feel like I'm very friendly. I get along with a lot of people professionally. It usually works out for me. But you got to accept, it's just a bunch of people like you. Some people are just not going to like you.
Can't please everyone.
This guy hated me. He hated me. And I tried to make small talk with him on the bus. And I knew he didn't like me. But when somebody doesn't like you, you just kind of needle them. I was, in a way, I guess, like he wanted a quiet ride. I'd ask him questions the whole time. Just to get a kick out of my own antics. But then I got caught by colors. I ended up getting kicked out of officer candidate school, which if I went back, I was supposed to be, so I basically kind of reset a lot. My dad was very upset with me. I didn't get kicked out of Valley Forge, by the way. I got kicked out of like something that would have looked very good applying to colleges. That's really it.
So your resume took a big hit.
For your college resume, I suppose. Yeah. Yes, it did. Looking back, I honestly, it really does. I look back and I regret that. You think of things like a fight that you lost or something really early on. It just like haunts you late at night randomly. That's one of those things where I'm like, why did I do that? But I was 16. I was young.
And sorry, can we like kind of summarize what you went off campus? You had some 40s. You went in rough part of Pennsylvania or Philly.
Oh yeah, I just sat around there with
But
him and
like you
drank
didn't,
40s. Yeah.
the cops didn't catch you, right? You didn't get in a fight. Like was there any
No,
like damage other than leaving? Like, did you do anything
no,
criminal? Okay.
no, 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 no.
Okay.
And I mean, that's probably criminal, underage drinking publicly
Okay.
out,
Got yeah.
but yeah, yeah, no, I
But you
didn't,
didn't get a DUI. You didn't
no,
crash into
never.
someone or something like. Okay.
No, and I couldn't even have driven back then. But no, this was just, I was not supposed to be. AWOL means absent without leave.
Yeah.
So I left campus and I got home late. So technically, they didn't know I went to Philly. They didn't know I did all this stuff. They just know I came home late and I smelled like a bar. And they made a big deal out of it. And, my dad actually didn't pick me up. It was a family friend. It was my uncle Phil. He came all the way out and picked me up. He didn't care. He was like just
Did he
happy
buy
to
you some
pick me
whiskey
up.
shots after that?
He had gotten actually Ballantine. He taught me what Ballantine beer 40s are. He picked up 40s on the way home. I was like, oh, it's too soon. You're rubbing it. You're rubbing it in, man. He's like, Ballantine, they don't make this anymore. That's what I remember. But yeah, so no, I didn't do anything, and I got home for the summer. It would have been my senior year, and I ended up staying home, which I kind of wanted. I mean, although I kind of fell a little bit back into my old ways. But I will say the year I was away from military school, those friends that you're having harmless fun with and stupid things like fireworks, and they actually that year started selling drugs. They started becoming like criminals. Not all of them, but a lot of them. That's when that it's not fun anymore. It's not cute when you're 17, 18.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and at this point, my grades were going back to public school. I still worked out, but I was just sick of that mediocrity of having really, because I really accomplished something that not a lot of other people, I feel like, would have been able to get through the same. And then you go back, it's like it never happened with your old friends. Not all of them. I have close ones that I still talk to this day, some of my best friends from that era, but I also saw the good friends separate. Things naturally just happen and change. I went to community college for a year or two. Got my grades up, got into the honors program. I was working at like Chuck E. Cheese, literally, as a game tech person, which that'll make you want to, step up in
Best
life.
birth control out there. You never want kids, probably after.
Yeah, no, I had to tunnel through. I had to clean up a lot of throw up. It was fun. I was only 17, 18. So it was that's if you're going to ever work at Chuck E. Cheese, you shouldn't be getting older than that. And unfortunately, they actually had a really great retirement program for the managers that were high end. I mean, it is interesting, and I don't know how Chuck E.'s doing today. They're a publicly traded company, but I learned from the managers that they took really good care of their people. They'd have a trip in Vegas. Interesting, old school type of you're with a business for 30 years. That doesn't really happen these days anymore, which is a shame. But at least going through there, I was like, okay, I want to work like now in between class, and it helped me kind of level up my life. And from there, great grades. I transferred to Stony Brook University, got my degree in English. Stony Brook is a really competitive school on Long Island, mostly for the STEM programs, but I took Japanese there. There's a huge contingency of Asians. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned that in the notes, but there's a huge contingency of Chinese, Korean, and Japanese exchange students that come to Stony Brook. And I took Japanese because I was bored of like Spanish and French, which I took in high school. And I took it in community college, and I saw that they had it in Stony Brook and a real program. And I'm so happy I did that because I was commuting to Stony Brook. It was 20 minutes away from where I was living in Port Jeff, the place really where I grew up. And I made friends with all of these kids from Japan that had just come to America, really close friends. And they helped me. I'd help them. I'd write their papers. They would help me in Japanese with homework and stuff. I'm an English major. Like, that's what I have. I'm a giver. So, yeah, but it was great. And the culture and the language is beautiful. And I can't speak it very well, but I can read and write. And I still remember the hiragana and katakana. Kanji is tough, but it was good because even though I was home and commuting, it felt like I was getting something from outside of that world. And I missed being on my own, which I really was in military school. You're with a roommate, but you're away from home. So, yeah, early on after I graduated from college, I match up. Life guides you in weird ways. I connect with this stockbroker, retired stockbroker from Chicago, Roland Perry. Institutional Analyst Inc. is his company. And he showed me the ropes of finance, equity, sweat equity, investor relations. He had a huge newsletter that he had formed in like the 90s when he was a broker he was in Chicago, then LA, Boca. He lives in Boca now on a yacht. He lives on a boat.
Wow.
And yeah, he's an very interesting guy, great guy, fun guy. And I owe him a visit actually in Boca. But and then I moved from then to a company called Corporate Connect. That's where I connected with family offices and Port Jeff, where I grew up. My neighbor and a friend of mine was not really these days, Megan. Her dad, Robert Fry, was connected with Renaissance Technologies, which is a huge firm on Long Island. They actually have connections with Stony Brook. I think they were involved with an incubator program they had when I was finishing up my bachelor's there.
Wow. Was Renaissance, didn't they make BlackBerry, or am I confusing that with someone else?
No, Renaissance does not. I don't think they made BlackBerry, but they're like a big hedge fund company. Let me explain them correctly. Or they're investment management firm.
Oh, okay.
And they Rentec, it's, they're based in East Setauket, which is in between my hometown and Stony Brook. But billions of dollars, I think, is like their AUM is 130 billion. So they're very powerful. Look them up after. Are you a fan of, do you know Eric Weinstein from Joe Rogan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And his brother. Yeah.
He mentioned Steve Simons, who's the CEO of, or he used to be, or he's one of the big guys there. And he mentioned the genius of Steve Simons. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I was exposed early on, coming from a family that had a lot of wealth. And coming from that area, despite the hardships, I was connected with a lot of families, people from legacy and family offices, just the nature of Long Island, right? Back then. Valley Forge, I was connected with a lot of families inadvertently because a lot of my peers and my colleagues were actually like, very wealthy people from Saudi, from South America, Guatemala, which is South America, and China, which I guess a lot of families are going there. A lot of families are leaving, but a lot of wealthy Chinese people my age. So it's kind of an interesting trend where even though I was always very respectful, even though I was a little bit wild when I was younger. And I would get sometimes the more reserved kids to come out with me and, let their hair down. I don't know, better term. And they appreciated me for that. I would have fun and I get along with everybody. And it's funny now, 10 years later, connecting with them on LinkedIn, catching up. Hey, how are you? But with the family office connection, formally, is a company called Corporate Connect. They did what Roland did, which, with the helping with their marketing program and a little bit of IR. But they would also film companies on the floor of the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange before anyone else was really doing that. And they would have family office events. They would have biotech symposiums. They'd invite a bunch of families. That was a big part of their offering. I learned about families and I interfaced with all of the families, most all of the families that I know today. It was from that time at Corporate Connect because I was eager. I was, determined to get out. And at this point, I was early on in my career. So I got over a lot of the issues that I had when I was younger with authority and, finding myself. I feel like I had just broken out of that.
Yeah.
And I was on a good path forward. And a lot of the family office heads at this point were older and third generation, and they didn't really get to interface with a lot of young people who were hungry and interesting, I don't know, and wanted to learn and sincere and was not asking them for things. I never asked them. They're so used to people being like, oh, sure. So when they had, all I would ask was about them. And if they wanted to come to an event, I'd give them things in a way. Right.
Yeah.
And that's how I built up my relationship. Yeah, exactly. So what'd you say?
You provided a service.
Provided a service. Yes. I gave them something and I wanted to help them and I wanted to learn. I was very curious and sincere and interested, I suppose. And that's how I really forged those relationships early on. And I'm glad I did. And then I left Corporate Connect. I moved to Sarasota, Florida for 3 years. I think I moved there 2016. And I worked for a PR agency, newswire.com. And they were great. Small business. I think they actually just sold they were just acquired by Issuers Direct 2 years ago, something like that. I just found out, but it was great. I helped run editorial with one of my other colleagues. So it was a press release distribution service. So they would have tens of, maybe hundreds on some days of press releases, and I would review it, AP style, make sure it's pristine, call them if there's an issue. And at this time, Web3, or not Web3 actually, it's just mostly ICOs and the blockchain. Bitcoin was really getting into the mainstream, transcended into the mainstreams 2017, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And I helped develop an editorial pipeline to publish press releases that had to do with blockchain and Web3. They had to have like a picture of their face on their website, which back then was a big ask.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't really much in the way of NFTs, so it was usually just a bunch of like generic names. Then you find out they're not from the US. It was a mess. The SEC was starting to come out with guidance. And I went more in the PR direction. I ended up telling Newswire to publish these press releases. I'll help do it so nobody gets arrested or in trouble by the SEC. And we nailed it. We had a great year. Went to the World Blockchain Forum. Newswire sent me there, an editor.
Wow.
It was at my request, but still,
I
and
insisted,
it was just fun.
It worked.
I insisted. I helped arrange that, but after that, I got tired of just editorial work. Wanted to go more back into the writing, creating, and I consulted and helped work with a lot of these crypto exchanges. None of the bad ones. CXIO is a great one. I mean, the retail space has taken a blow. It's starting to come back now.
Yeah.
But really great, impressive people, a lot of projects, interesting projects that were altcoins. And that was for about 2-3 years until the last, about 2 years ago, I pivoted in the direction I'm in now. But something that I never did, and I'm thankful, is I never pitched any of the families on any of these crypto Web3 projects because I knew what their appetite for risk was. And I knew, because I asked them not if they were interested in crypto. I asked them what they're interested in.
Sometimes you ask people what they're interested in before you pitch them on things.
Oh man, and it was tempting, Matt. I'm telling you, because a lot of these projects were I made a lot of money out of it. I lost some towards the end of the last bull run, but I was like, oh, I think I can help them. But I just felt like if I opened up the floodgates, I could lose a lot of trust. And when I started to revisit them, and I started the Family Office Growth News, that's one of my properties, where it's like a monthly piece, and I just started publishing it on LinkedIn about a year ago, and I disseminated it to my thousands of families and institutional investors. It's a trust thing, and this is something our mutual friend Ron Diamond talks about a lot. Ron's a mentor of mine, and that is how I found you, because I saw the great interview. We had the two of them that you did with Ron. It's the relationship business, and if people, especially if these families, feel that you're in it for the right reasons and that you have good intentions, and if you have integrity, they'll work with you even if they feel like they can make a little bit more trying somebody else out. So, and that's something that I feel like I was able to be trusting in myself, and having a certain standard is probably why I never went to jail or got in more trouble than I did. I get really close to the line, and sometimes I cross it, but then I usually double back and go the right way afterwards. So I'll pass it to you because I feel like I'm rambling.
Well, no, I mean, it's a great story, because family offices are notoriously insular, and it's very difficult to work with them. But I think what you did is universal to so many industries. It's like you didn't just pitch something immediately. You got to know them. You developed trust. And
yes,
I mean, when we first connected, I remember we just talked on the phone, and I could listen to you for hours, because I like that drive. And I guess one thing I ask a lot of guests is, like, what's a valuable lesson you took from maybe some of the adversity, whether it was from military school, your time going back home, like what if you could kind of boil it down to one or two things, what lesson did you learn that you think was most important to your career now?
I could come up with two, I think. About first one, and from military school, and the emotional hardships leading up to and during and surrounding that is most people don't realize how resilient they really are, just because something is going to go wrong or could go wrong or has gone wrong. It's not the end. And I'm in my head a lot often. I can ramble and talk and communicate, but I'm a lot in my head. And I find that I have a tendency to catastrophize, and that is like the work. You don't try not to go down that route if you can. I feel you got, and just forward momentum. I went there for football. I destroyed my knee. I think I'm gonna have to get another surgery. I got a Brazilian jiu-jitsu about 3 years ago, and I keep plateauing because every time I keep hurting myself. But anyways, you got to keep the resilience. I think is important.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're so more, and we can endure so much more, I think, than we think. And I'm grateful for military school because I had so many lows there, and I had so many instances of humiliation and this didn't work out, but I stuck with it. And I think that resilience and sticking with something, sticking with people, giving them benefit of the doubt. I feel like that's something where people, and I have great relationships with people because I gave them benefit of the doubt. Not if they burned me. They burned me, then goodbye. But that's that. And professionally, I guess with the family office side, and it was, I guess, I don't know if transparency is kind of a cop out, but curiosity, I don't know. And I don't know if you can teach yourself curiosity. Maybe it's a thing, but being willing to listen to people, I guess. And maybe, I don't know how many people say that, but listening to their wants and needs. I mean, usually if you listen to somebody in like your first couple of conversations, if it is a family office or an investor, you kind of know what they're looking for. And that means that if you're going to communicate, the next time you communicate with them, bring them value. Right. You learn a lot there, and learning how to cater. And it's funny because I work with founders, connect them with families, and help them raise capital with like my marketing, my investor research reports, and so on. But I won't put the fintech guy with the with the Beanie Baby guy. You know what I mean?
It's a mismatch,
I never would do that, because then they'll stop listening to me. Then I can't do what I do. So I guess, there's a tendency to belligerently pitch things, I think, and maybe that's the Silicon Valley type of, keep breaking type of thing. But with people, it's, be careful and be deliberate and be specific, and they will pick up on that and appreciate you for that.
Right. Well, what have you done career-wise, Ryan, that you're most proud of?
That's a great question. Departing away from the finance space and going into PR early on in my career was maybe ill-advised. I feel like something, again, through line from military school, my willingness to throw myself to the wolves is paid off, I think. And it took a while for me to realize that. But these departures, they all help. Now I'm running my own business, right? And I'm growing. And I feel like taking that leap of faith, or, well, let's try this out. I'm glad I took the risks that I did. And I'm glad I followed through on them. I don't know if that's very concise, but
it answers it perfectly. And what are you most optimistic about?
The future, I guess. I think things are going to pan out. There's a lot of gloom and doom, and and I get it. But I'm optimistic about the relationships I'm making. Like, thank you, Matt, for having me on too. I'm happy. I'm looking forward to sharing this podcast. I don't know if I can listen to myself, but I'm happy to share it and promote it. I like meeting these interesting people. Danielle Patterson, another mutual friend, Warren. These are people where if you're willing to put yourself in risk and put yourself in situations and meet new people, great things happen, and that's almost more important than selling and pitching to other people. I find networking, again, I'm like platitudes left and right, but I'm looking forward to the future and growing, and with my partners and with my clients, and looking forward to the future of Arondight Advisors.
I mean, it's so nice to see people looking forward to the future. And, I think you're going to be inspiring, not just to me, but to lots of folks out there. And where can they
Thank you.
learn about you, or if they want to connect, maybe they also tore patella at one time. Like, how
Oh
can they reach
yeah.
out to you, Ryan?
Oh yeah. I've been to that Reddit too. And I could you could find me on ArondightAdvisors.com. Arondight, ARONDIGHT advisors on LinkedIn is probably best. My website's getting redesigned. Hopefully by the time this goes out, it will be done because, I basically did it myself. I'm not a fan. But we're almost through onto V2. LinkedIn, you can possibly put in the show notes. It's just Ryan Austin is my name. 2 first names, 3 Andrew, but that's not, on LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com and /n/ Ryan -A -Austin.
Very cool. We'll put the links in the show description, but we have to have you back,
Okay.
Ryan. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining
I'd
us.
love
Really
to.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.